I've always known that people really focus on themselves first before they are really thinking about others. Not all people, but most people. And even if you are a generous, caring, empathetic, understanding person, really people respond to what's in it for them. And if you take the approach of focusing on what they want, not what you want, especially if you're in the marketing or sales world, you come across less of a opportunist.
Joe Polish, welcome to the Live Your Truth Now podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing excellent. It's Friday, time where we're recording this, and it's been great connecting with you over the last couple interactions via text and our mutual friend and a guest of the show, Wesley Kress. So I'm really glad we get to spend some time together today.
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, Wes is awesome. Good dude.
Yeah, Wes is fantastic. So shout out to Wes if you're listening to the show. We love you, man. Joe, I got to tell you, it's an honor for you to come on the show because one, What's in It for Them is one of the books that I was actually quite blown away with because one, the title just kind of struck me as odd for a business book. I think most people read business books with the intention of what am I going to get from it? And you completely were like, no, it's not about you. It's about other people. And so kind of just throw a softball question out there for you. Where did the genesis of the title come from? Why is it focused on other people first, rather than making a traditional business book where it's mostly focused on the individual achieving success?
Yeah, well, Scott Hoffman, who is, I guess, my agent, I would say, for this particular book, because I've written 5 books. This is the first one I had, published by a mainstream publisher, and that was Hay House. And part of my methodology is really about not focusing on what you want, but what it's in it for the other person. And years ago, I would teach these sort of events with overhead projectors when I was a dead broke carpet cleaner living off credit cards. Then I learned how to turn my business around. And then I built in the 90s the largest training organization for people that were professional carpet cleaners and fire and water restoration contractors. They had built up this whole training business with clients all over the world that were in that industry. And I remember talking about a line that many people have used, where what's someone's favorite radio station? Because back then there were no podcasts, there were no, there was digital music or anything. It was people listened to the radio, right? Or they watched MTV when MTV used to have nothing but music videos. And we would say, someone's favorite radio station is WIIF FM. What's in it for me? I've always known that people really focus on themselves first before they are really thinking about others. Not all people, but most people. And even if you are a generous, caring, empathetic, understanding person, really people respond to what's in it for them. And if you take the approach of focusing on what they want, not what you want, especially if you're in the marketing or sales world, it becomes, you come across less of a opportunist. There's nothing wrong with pursuing opportunities, but there's difference between being an opportunist where you're just going to say things or try to build rapport with someone, not from the sense of am I really helping them, but like what do I want and how do I try to act like I care about their kids or I care about their interests. Or a lot of people can't tell. I mean, it would be foolish for me to say, that flattery doesn't work. Flattery does work. It's like sort of junk food, though. If you overdo it, if it's not sincere, it's really not nutrition. It's more like
it's McDonald's.
Exactly. Yeah. So how I came across it is I learned that in my life, if I focus on what other people, what's in it for them, I'm less emphasize what I want. There's not a neediness there, and there's coming from a real genuine place because I am human. Believe me, I wish the world would give me everything that I wanted, that people would say I'm great, that I would be flowered with money and love and material items and status and all that sort of stuff. All of that's seductive. All of that's, kind of cool in a lot of ways. However, it's sort of empty. And I believe if your pursuit in life is growth for yourself and others versus status, you're going to go a lot farther. And I've had so many years of conversations about this, even going back to my friend Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence. I mean, he's like the original quote unquote influence expert, right? I mean, wrote the most thorough book on how to influence people. And that was before there was ever a word referring to social media people or people that have big followings as influencers. And so it's like, well, what the hell are you trying to influence? And so me and Robert, have, and his wife, Babette, have had numerous discussions about ethics and about the ethical use of influence and how do you genuinely approach someone? How do you use reciprocity in a way to where it feels really good for both people? Because I don't want to be used and I don't want to use other people. I want people to utilize me. I want to utilize other people. I don't want to be used. And so, and it may be very subtle. And I'll tell you, like, even some of the biggest takers have a hard time realizing that they are takers. Some of the most manipulative people don't think they're manipulative. And many of them are so good at convincing themselves, well, if they're going to spend the money, they might as well spend it with me or they might as well get my stuff. And that's just so throughout the personal development and marketing and sales world, which is so important and it's so valuable to be building these sort of skills. I mean, learning how to influence, learning what causes people to say yes, no. I mean, everything. I did this really great Genius Network meeting last year where I had, three of the top world's leading experts in the area of behavior, influence, and negotiation all on a panel together. BJ Fogg, who's a professor.
Yeah, tiny habits. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a dear friend. He's a Genius Network member, and so we had him. I had Chris Voss, who's one of my 100K members, and so he
Yeah.
wrote the book Never Split the Difference, sold over 4 million copies. He's now, the top negotiation guy in the world in terms of recognized. He's, former top international FBI hostage negotiator, and then Robert Cialdini, and then I
Mhm.
also had Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction.
Yeah, Traction. Yeah, I got that book. Traction. You got Traction Rocket Fuel over there too. Gino's great.
Yeah, yeah, they're awesome. So I had all of them up at the same time. I brought Gino up just because I wanted to put them all together and ask him
That's
a
unbelievable.
couple of questions. But the main thing was with about influence, and I was asking them all about the ethics. Okay, yeah, you can persuade, you can negotiate, you can try to get what you want. How do you do this in a way to where you the other person feels good about it? And people love to be sold, they hate to be pressured. So how do where do you apply influence? How do you do it in a way to where it is really good for the other person, not just good for you? And so the question, what's in it for them, I think has served me really well. I think it serves a lot of people well. It may not short term get you what you want, but sometimes it does. Usually it does. Long term, though, you're really looking at the bigger picture. I mean, yeah, how would you take care of your best friend? How would you treat a best friend? You would give them a lot of slack. And so I think if you treat people with respect and responsibility, what is responsibility? It's responding with ability. So that's a long sort of rant to your question.
No, Joe, I think it's a fantastic way to open up this conversation because one, as the creator and founder of Genius Network, and also just being known, from some people that know you pretty well, they said Joe is not only a great human being, but he knows everybody and he knows what relationships are really all about. And there was a quote that actually came to mind as you were talking about this from the book. Everybody knows people prefer to do business within strong relationships. The unanswered question was always exactly how to build those relationships. And I think the notion that people love to be sold, but they also want to be sold with authenticity. They want to be sold with trust. And one of the things that has come up with my audience specifically being entrepreneurs and also friends of mine that are entrepreneurs is there's always this pressure to feel like I have to sell no matter what. And with the pressure of sales comes almost the compromise of morals and values and ethics to do whatever it takes to get that deal across the finish line. One of the things that I really want to talk to you about is, the role of a salesperson and what is really the job of someone doing sales and how can someone really integrate these core concepts of authenticity, trust, and rapport within their selling practice without feeling like that they're being grimy or they're like trying to pull a fast one over somebody else? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, let's go back to a definition of selling. And I asked my friend Dan Sullivan. He's the founder of a company called Strategic Coach. I've been in his group since 1997. He's been in Genius Network since 2010. So Dan has coached more successful entrepreneurs than almost anyone you would know. I mean, really high level people running, very successful companies. And I asked him years ago, what's your definition of selling? And he just blurted this out, and I wrote it down. I even did a short video on this that they it was uploaded on YouTube over, I don't know, at this point in time, maybe 10, 11 years ago. If you just type in "is selling evil" into Google, it'll probably be the first thing.
That's a great search term.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they asked me, "Is selling evil?" I mean, I was asked this for a documentary, and this B-roll footage never showed up in the movie. It was one of my team members that saw this clip, uploaded it on YouTube, and then it ended up taking off. They used this video for college courses on teaching sales and whatnot. And so anyway, I quote the line where I say, "Selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result." So I'll say it again. So if you get someone and this is from Dan Sullivan. So if you get someone intellectually engaged in a future result, so how do you do that? Well, you do that through how you position, package everything, your message, identifying who they are, what do they want, what do they need. A lot of the more what's in it for them, the more you can get hone in on who you should be talking to about your thing. And I'll get to the point of, how do you effectively sell? Well, for one, don't sell anything that you don't believe in, right? Unless you're in a desperate situation or it's life threatening, why would you try to persuade someone to do something that isn't in their best interest? So I'll come back to that. But to go back to the definition, getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. Now, I've written that statement up on whiteboards. I've asked people, what are the most important words? People usually say commit, engaged, take action, emotional, intellectual. But the key words when it comes to ethics is good for them, because you can get someone intellectually engaged in a future result like watch this pornography, eat this crappy food, take this shot, take this drug that really isn't good for them. And you can use all kinds of mental manipulations in order to emotionally and intellectually engage them, right? But at the end of the day, is it good for them? So that's one thing that I always look for. I have not gotten involved with, I mean, every day there are opportunities that are presented to me that I have to put through the filter. Is this good for me? Is this good for the other person? Why the hell would I do this? Including strategies, including techniques, including joint ventures, including products and services and political beliefs, industries. I mean, everything comes across my sort of sphere of influence. I mean, I run Genius Network. I'm around constant experts and successful entrepreneurs in numerous categories related to everyone. Everyone's got something to sell. Everybody wants something. I mean, one thing, I always say, Mike, is that we all want something. I want something. No one's even listening or watching us right now that doesn't want something. Why would they take the time to listen to this unless they're hoping that it's going to give them maybe some strategy, some insight, some perspective, some way to think about something? So everybody wants something. At the time we were recording this, 2 hours ago, I wanted lunch. So I went with my assistant Eunice, and I went with one other person, real smart dude that's here named Nick Peterson, and we went and grabbed lunch. We were both hungry. We wanted lunch. So we all want something, but when it comes to selling, is make sure that your give is equal to or greater than your want. And the way that you allow people to feel good is that you show up. It's totally okay to show up with wanting to make a sale. It's okay with whatever it is that you're offering in your business. There'd be no business, there'd be no commerce, there'd be no ability to pay for anything if people didn't want something. And then there were people out there that were incentivized to sell it. Salespeople used effectively selling used effectively, and maybe I should say utilized, but the concept of using selling in the most effective way is really looking at problems that exist in the world and offering a solution to the problem. A company that does well is solving problems for a profit. There are plenty of problems in the world. And if you can solve the problem and you can profit from that, and you're going to be happy and they're going to be happy, great. But there's a lot of people that don't solve any problems. They make promises, they offer cruel optimism, which the self help world, the fitness world, the financial world is filled with people selling cruel optimism, meaning it's so easy to get rich. It's so easy to lose weight. It's so easy to, yeah. And life is not so easy. Some things are easier than others. And there are ways to develop an elf business, easy, lucrative, and fun, versus a half business, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. One of the best ways to develop an elf business is make it easy for other people. Don't be a jerk, care about them. You know, one of my favorite quotes I heard early on in my 20s is be nice to the people you meet on the way up. They're the same people you're going to meet on the way down, and you will meet them. Don't do you leave scorched earth? You're rude to people. Your desire to grow and make money is where you'll put morals and ethics and care and concern to the side. In the short term, you might make the sale, you might get the girl, you might buy the car, but at what cost? And so yeah. So the thing with how to sell, for one, enter the conversation that's already existing in the prospect's mind. That's a line out of the Robert Collier letter book, which was he was a copywriter, and that book I think was written in the 50s. So and I will say things through quotes and metaphors because that's how I understand them, and it allows me to frame things. So if you want to sell what John Smith buys, you got to see through John Smith's eyes. So how do you put yourself in the shoes? And if you don't know how to do that, you ask, you converse. You talked about trust, right? You mentioned the word trust. My buddy Neil Strauss, he has in the book The Game, which was he wrote a book years ago, Penetrating the Secret Society of Pickup Artists.
Yeah.
Now, these guys, he went out and he studied and became friends with all of these pickup artists. And for good or bad, it helped turn it into a freaking industry of people teaching, pickup. And asking someone out on a date versus a long-term relationship are two different things. Getting someone's phone number, getting an email, having someone sleep with you quickly, those are completely different. So there's transaction people and there's relationship people. A lot of that is transaction stuff. Do you want to be in the transaction business or do you want to be in the relationship business? And then 10 years later, I helped Neil with one of his books called The Truth, where he did a lot of research on, he did a lot of therapy. He did a lot of work on himself and had a lot of transformations over a 10-year period. And I helped him a lot with the addiction related stuff, which is in the book, The Truth. But anyway, he says rapport is trust with comfort. And I apply that. So, okay, well, you can build rapport relatively quickly. You can do it through humor. You can do it through mutual interests. You can go where people are at, find out what they're interested in. You can talk with them. You can be enthusiastic. I mean, there's many ways to build rapport. One of the best ways is to show up interested in what they're doing because I like when people are interested in me. I like when people are interested in what I'm interested in. It's amazing. I don't know about you, but on social media, email, me and my team every day get dozens and dozens of pitches where people are just trying to sell us stuff, or we can edit videos for you. We can do this. Would you like to build a following? Your content online is really great, but they don't reference the content.
It's a volume game, Joe. Like, it's like, I remember that's so funny you said that. I was getting a DM from somebody who was like at 1:30 in the morning was like, have you ever thought about a TED talk? And I'm like, first of all, there's no way you're sending me this at 1:30 in the morning and it's only going to me. Second of all, you have no context on me, who I am at all and what I'm into. And yeah, sure, I've thought about it, but like that's if you're going to just kind of, throw that out there and hope you hit something, that's not really building sales. And something you were talking about with just trust, rapport, and comfort is the exploration of pain. And that can be a very delicate process because there are people out there who like to be button pushers and like really like rub it in and, kind of be masochistic in some sort of way with exploring what pain is. And then there are some people who understand the delicacy of pain, like understanding like, hey, it's the person's pain, but really knowing and understanding and empathetically connecting to them really breeds trust and rapport. One of the things I wanted to dive into you when you were talking about sales was the exploration of pain or even relationship building. And how do you navigate this arena of suffering for people? Because everybody in some form or fashion has a level of suffering. It's either light suffering or completely heavy suffering, depending where you're part in life. How does one go about navigating that when building relationships, whether it's personal or whether it's in the sales arena or business arena?
Well, let me say this. Anything that I say, I can only speak from my own life experience. So everyone has different levels of their own challenges and pain, how they engage with them, their own traumas, how they work through them. Are they genuinely empathetic? Unfortunately, some narcissistic or sociopathic or psychopathic people don't have the ability to feel empathy for others or different levels of it. So some people are infinitely more sensitive to other humans and genuinely more caring, and other people are good at mirroring those people and acting like they are. And that's the danger zone, is that when someone actually thinks they care when really they don't care, they're just acting like they care. All of this has come out of my own pain, my own struggles, my own suffering, and I can, I can build rapport with people just by getting them to be sympathetic and empathetic towards me if I want to tell a sob story. I mean, what I've really cautioned myself and others about is, if you've had difficult stuff happen to you in your life, and who hasn't? And I certainly have had some pretty awful things happen as a kid, and physical, mental, sexual abuse. And at the same time, I have to be careful not to get into woundology, because if I and I've done enough therapy, and I'll continue to do therapy, but I've done enough therapy to where I am aware that if I fixate for periods of time, not in the right environment, I can feel very sad for a young kid that lost their mother, that had abuse, all that. And at the same time, it's when I delve into that pain. You want to be in a safe place when you explore it. In order to best help other people with pain, you almost have to walk through your own and process it, and often sit with it. And that's, I think, when you understand that everybody's someone's child, someone's friend, someone's mother. Some people have been severely abandoned. Like my friend Dr. Don Wood said, if you understood the atmospheric conditions of somebody's life, it would make sense why they are the way that they are. Try to think about, who do you want to be a hero to? Why do you care about that? Why do you care about helping them? How have you got through the hardest times in your life? Who was there with you that helped you do it? What characteristics did they show up with? And what can you learn from that? How can you be an encourager? So, pain is one of the best ways to build rapport. It sounds weird, and it's not like you want to look for pain, nor do you want to utilize, or, well, I should say use. You don't want to use pain in order to pretend you care about the person and say, oh, by the way, buy my shit.
Yeah. Not a good sales tactic, guys.
Yeah, one of the best ways to do sales is to not have any commerce involved in it. Just learn how to be influential with getting people to like you and develop relationships and friendships first. Because, a sales transaction oftentimes is, just really a good rapport, trust, and then a solution to what it is they're looking for. And everything that I've learned, I was shy, I was introverted, scared to talk to people, still am. Still am. I don't like going to cocktail parties. I get anxious. I feel nervous. If I have to go speak in front of crowds, there's always a little bit of a knot in my stomach, sometimes a lot, but I do it anyway, because I learned early on that that which you fear and don't face controls you. That which you fear and you take steps to face, you can oftentimes control it, or at least better manage it. And the more you do it, the more effective you become. When I was first doing sales and asking, I sold freaking vacuums uh, newspaper subscriptions door to door. I won a trip to Disneyland when I was like, 14 or 15 years old by knocking on doors and selling a bunch of newspaper subscriptions. And we'd have people, yell at us, scream at us, cuss at us, throw water at us. I mean, like in here, I'm a little kid knocking on doors, shy, introverted. I was too afraid to ask anyone out on a dance in high school to go to prom or anything like that. So I never went. So I was a really anxiety ridden kid. I became a drug addict because I was so afraid of relationships and people and things like that. And so I think anything I've learned about developing relationships came out of my own pain, came out of recovery, and then realizing that, we're all just trying to connect with each other. There's real connection where you really connect with someone, and then there's connecting where you connect with someone by conning them. So there, don't be a connector, be a true connector. And to the point with rapport you can oftentimes build quickly. It could be an introduction from somebody or putting something in front of somebody to position yourself, which is always smart. You want to position yourself at the top of people's agendas. And one of the ways to position someone at the top of the agenda is find out what they're interested in and provide something of value. Could be an article, could be a video, could be a compliment. It could, and what we're talking about, not a bullshit. I haven't researched you and I want to just try to sell you something numbers game. I will often like instruct my team if so depending on it, if they're just clearly idiot who's or a bot or something that's clearly fake. If someone is attempting to say something in a way to where they're hoping that it gets the attention, or they have truly watched a little bit about me or listened to a podcast, but they're still coming across as like, this is just such a bad pitch. We'll say, go to joesfreebook.com, download my book, Life Gives to the Giver, read it. And if you want a copy of What's in It for Them, happy to send you one. Give us an address. I will try to help people that are trying to pitch me stuff if there's at least some modicum of intelligence. But some people are so stupid where you're like, hopefully one day they'll learn. But but I try to help. I mean, and by the way, I mean, if they watch any of my content, I talk about this stuff.
Yeah, you're giving away the playbook on how to get something across your desk.
Yeah, and it's amazing. People are trying to sell me on stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, read my damn book. I lay out exactly how to sell to a guy like me. It's so easy if they take the time in order to do it.
Well, like with all things, and one of the things, and I'm so glad you talked about, like your book you wrote, "Life Tends to Give to the Giver," and one of the things that I love about that is giving is such a superpower, and I think for a lot of people in the self development world, they've heard that so many times, like you got to give before you receive, you got to think of others before you think of yourself. I was having a conversation with my future wife, and we were talking about giving. And she asked me a question I thought was so beautiful, which was like, what do you think the dark side of giving is? And immediately I said, oh, it's overgiving, 100%. And she goes, well, what is that? And I said, well, overgiving happens when the individual often sacrifices their own self needs and like takes care of themselves for other people. And that's where the burnout happens. I told her I was interviewing on the podcast today, and she said, you should ask Joe. So, Joe, I wanted to ask you, is there a dark side to giving? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the biggest dark sides is if you're a giver, then it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how often you will be taken advantage of. And in the beginning, until you develop spidey senses or until you get taken advantage of or betrayed or lied to or manipulated or completely gaslit by a taker, if you are a giver, a genuine giver, you are a target. You are a magnetic force for takers to look for you and to take advantage of you. Every genuine, true giver out there that does it consistently, not just, oh, we happen to have one of our days where we decided to be generous. If you are a useful, grateful, generous, and caring person, and you have that as an operating system, your takers are looking for those people. You're a mark. However, you can develop your spidey senses if you look at the relationships that work and the relationships that don't, and you create a criteria for yourself. And I lay out my criteria in my book, and I'm not going to tell people they need to live like me, think like me, or what I care about is success. I mean, I have no right to tell someone what success is. For some people, it's developing a bunch of relationships. For others, it's making money. Others, it's having a great physical body. For others, it's being a great parent or being in a great relationship. So everyone has different versions of success. But the thing with being a giver is, does it expand you or contract you? If you start noticing that your desire to help other people is depleting you, not energizing you, that's where you have to kind of check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that's where you look at codependency or you look at enabling. And by the way, there are times where you will have a family member or a friend where you will make sacrifices that it's going to take your time. I talk in chapter 2 about Tammy, time, attention, money, effort, and energy, where you're going to invest your Tammy, and it's going to take more time than you expected, more attention than you may have, more money than you could ever, and you're going to exhaust energy and effort, and you're going to be like, oh my God, I just went through a shitstorm. And there are times in life where you need to step up and do those things for your kids, for your cause, for your community, and it may be a tremendous struggle. In moments like that, I always tell myself, amateurs wait for inspiration, professionals do it with a headache. So there are times when you're going to play broken. You just got to step up because no one else is stepping up, and and you're going to take a stand. However, to live like that 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24/7 will just burn you out. So, in order to prepare for those moments where you really have to give it your all, you want to treat yourself like the $1 million racehorse. So let me give that as an analogy, because it's so if you had $1 million racehorse and every time that horse ran a race, you'd win $1 million, then you would treat that horse in a certain way, because if you didn't, it wouldn't win races for you, because that is the asset, right? And so have the best food, the best trainers, the best nutrition, the best nourishment, the best relationships. You would have the best races for that horse to be in. What you wouldn't do is you wouldn't have that horse hanging around a bunch of loser horses that are negative and toxic and unethical. You would not have that horse up till 3 a.m. every morning, snorting crystal meth, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, watching porn.
That's a hell of a horse, Joe. If you
Very creative $1 million horse that watches porn.
yeah,
And so you wouldn't have the horse in the wrong races, right? There's things you would do and things you wouldn't do. So when it comes to giving, my buddy, the late Sean Stevenson, he was my best friend. He was an amazing guy. And he spent his life in a wheelchair. He had a brittle bone condition. And before the age of 18 years old, he had over 200 broken bones in his body. He would snap a collarbone by sneezing sometimes. His parents, Greg and Gloria, are dear friends of mine. This guy suffered tremendously. And through that suffering, he was somehow able to transcend so much of that pain and became one of the most caring, kind, and compassionate people. So I actually think pain, if digested effectively, and it's easy to say when you're not in such severe pain where you can find lessons in it. It's like I can make analogies about the value of fire. But if fire burns your house down, or you have third-degree burns all over your body, or it kills somebody, you have a different relationship with fire than someone that's just using a fireplace to heat themselves when they're cold. So all of this is contextual. The pain is, you got to look at the balance of when is giving and expanding, and when is it really contracting. And I'd be a hypocrite to say that, let's use the word overgiving. I mean, I've constantly depleted myself. I wouldn't have written a book called What's in It for Them if I was not just looking at what I did in my life that worked and sharing those methodologies, but I also share the shit that didn't work for me, where I did make mistakes, where I didn't have the awareness, where, I mean, people ask, why'd you write the book? And I don't give this stupid personal development moron question of, I just want to help people and I just want to share my gifts to the world because I've been so grateful. I mean, that's a nice way of manipulating people and trying to act like, you didn't. Of course, there's something in it for me to write that book. I mean, I wrote a book called What's in It for Them. In a lot of ways, I wrote it for me. And let me say what I mean by that. So I wanted to dissect my operating system so I could better figure out what the hell works, what doesn't work, how do I do more of the things that does work? How do I less the things that don't? And if I have to figure out how to teach it to people in a way to where they not only hear it and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but I'm able to transfer it to them so that they can effectively use it in their life, which I've been able to do with a lot of people, then I've created something really valuable. So I think we need to look at our own life, our own behavior, and just audit it and say, what the hell am I doing? Because what is winning mean? I have this domain name. I've not done anything with it yet. Someday maybe I will. I have like 1,000 domain names I've done nothing with. Every time I get a damn idea, I register.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah, some people are like that. My ADD brain is like that, but it's winners find ways. So I saw it on the back of a baseball jersey. Winners find ways, and I was like, that's a cool name. And lo and behold, the website was available. But that was years ago. But anyway, so winners find ways. Well, what does that mean? They find ways to win. So I have found ways to win in some areas of life, but losers find ways to lose. I've got so many things that I've done that just didn't work. And one guaranteed way to make sure that you fail a lot of the time is to approach other people in other relationships with the thing that you want is the primary thing that you're entering that relationship with. But if you can put that shit to the side and you can say, okay, I'm going to think in a counterintuitive way. I'm going to just be as useful and as valuable as humanly possible in the right context and see how that approach works, then you try that. But here's the funny thing, and I mentioned this too, is that you have to deal with people at the level at which they respond. Many people will not respond to kindness.
That's very key. That is so key.
Yeah, some people are not. They're so traumatized. There are certain relationships where if you're not an asshole or cocky or whatever, they're not going to pay attention to you because their armor is so up. Let's use dating as an example. So you talk about Neil Strauss. So if you dissect all the dating books, it's all about not coming across as needy, not coming across. So you have a lot of scared, shy, introverted men, because those books are mainly written for men, that they don't know how to approach someone. And when they say they don't know how, here's the secret: almost everyone is scared. Everyone, even the guys that come across as so freaking confident, even the women that are so come across as so confident and so aloof, most people are just scared little kids deep down inside. People say, I want to meet someone that doesn't play games. Well, unfortunately, people play games. And what you don't hear them say is, I wish I could meet someone that doesn't play games. What they're really saying is, I don't want to lose the game. Because if you play a game that you win, you want to play that game all the time.
Right,
Then you're
exactly.
bored with it. Then you want to play a more challenging game. So the question is, do you play the game caring about the other person you're playing the game with, or are you playing the game to where you will win at all costs, no matter what you have to do, and you will lie, you will cheat, you will steal, you will be a jerk. And if that's how so people don't want to play games with people like that. That's what they really like. I want to meet someone that doesn't play games. What they're really saying is, I don't want someone to hurt me. I don't want someone
Yeah,
to take advantage of me. So here's the thing: don't take advantage of other people.
really.
Really. And if you, for some reason, if your desperation or your whatever, your fear is so great that it is causing you to violate your own value system, get some help. This is going to sound like the weirdest sales training methodology in the world. Go to an open 12-step meeting and sit in a room with an alcoholic or a drug addict or go to Codependence Anonymous, go to Sex Addicts Anonymous, go to Gamblers Anonymous, go to Gaming Anonymous, go to Workaholics Anonymous. Go to one of the open meetings, which means you don't have to identify as an addict. An open meeting means anyone can go to it. A closed meeting is, like a closed Alcoholics Anonymous, and sit and listen to people that have to sell themselves on a different way of living when the strongest relationship they ever had was with their addiction. It'll give you a whole nother perspective of humanity and the pain. That's how you develop and nurture care and empathy and understanding and most people won't do it. And I've had lots of people that have, that has changed their life. And I say, don't just do one meeting because you may hate it. Go to like 6 of them. Treat it as if you were an actual addict.
Yeah, an actual program. Yeah.
And it's a program for living. And you don't have to even like 12 steps. And you may not like to talk about God because some groups talk about God, others don't. My favorite line by Bill W., the founder of AA, was, as alcoholics, we're trying to drink God out of a bottle. And what addicts have done is, I look at addiction as a solution to pain. It's not a very good solution. It's a solution that could hurt you, kill you, and hurt others. But in the moment, if you're depressed or if you're anxious or if you're lonely, drinking alcohol, watching porn, being on the internet, scrolling through social media, anything to get that dopamine hit, gambling, food, whatever. It's this pursuit of just trying to feel better. And if you understand that humans are all walking around trying to get more woo and less ah, and you can show up with more woo and less ah for them, they're going to want to relate. They're going to probably buy from you.
Yeah, and that's the giving piece too, right? Like that's the giving piece is like bringing more joy to people through that. And there was something that I wanted to talk to you about because you're known for with a lot of people as this giver, this relationship builder. Genius Network is about easy, lucrative, and fun. And one of the things that I've also heard about you is the power of the word no, and you use that a lot, and that's like on the other side of like what's in it for them, and relationship building is also knowing what to say no to and how to say no. And from your experience with someone that gets deals across their desk, gets opportunities like come do this, speak at this event, first of all, it's humanly impossible for you to be everywhere at every single place at every single time. So you clearly have a system on what you value as a great opportunity and being comfortable with the word no. And the reason why I bring this up is there's people that are listening in my audience right now that are people pleasers and have a very hard time saying no to things because one, they might be in the early stage of their business, and you know that everybody, you're a yes person for the first couple of years until you can finally say no. And when you finally get to the no part, it feels weird because you're like, well, wait a minute, I want to help out everybody, but now I have to say no. In your personal experience, what's Joe Polish's system for saying no? And how does he come to terms with being okay saying no?
Just so everyone knows, it is difficult for me to say no to things that I want. Constantly working on it all the time. No is everything you say yes to, you say no to something else. So if I say yes to do this interview, I'm saying no to everything else I could do. If I say yes to go hang out with this person, I'm saying no to every other person, book. So we're always saying yes and we're always saying no. So all day long, there are literally hundreds of yes and no decisions. And even when we say yes, we're saying no to something else. So for me, it's like if I say no, it's because I need to say yes to something that I feel is going to be a better use of my time, attention, talent, and stuff like that. So I'm always thinking about Tammy, time, attention, money, effort, and energy. Where do I want to spend my Tammy, and how do I say no? Secondly, it's is it elf or is it half? I put things through the elf filter. Is this person or this project or this thing easy, lucrative, and fun, or could it become easy, lucrative, and fun, or is it half? If it's hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, I then discipline myself. No. Also, one of the chapters is get as close to in person as possible and create value on the spot. And you'll often meet people and they will say, hey, we should talk sometime, or hey, we should go to lunch sometime, or hey, we should get together sometime. And you're meeting them at a conference or somewhere. And my whole thing is like, if you can just ask yourself honestly, would I like to do that? Then the first, if you would say, well, how about right now? Something like, well, we should talk sometime. Well, let's just talk right now. We should do lunch. Let's do it like, how about today? Or let's do it tomorrow if you can. Now, here's where people need to say no, though. If you really don't want to, you can be polite and say, yeah, give me a call in a week or two and or, whatever, I'm busy, but you really don't want to go to lunch with them, but you kind of string it along, or you don't say no. And all of a sudden, in their minds, you have agreed to a future date. And in your mind, you're like, shit, I kept the cord that I didn't cut with this energetic thing that I don't want this obligation. And so part of it is what is the opportunity cost of saying yes? What is the opportunity cost of saying no? And the more that you are clear on what your values are, what your rules of engagement are, if you have like now I lay out my criteria and I mean again, someone does not need to buy my book. If you find this conversation useful, whatever, you can buy my book or what. It's not going to make or change my life if you buy my book or not. What I hope for putting my stuff, and I've, hopefully this interview is helpful and people can work with this. The thing is, this will come through, as my friend Chris Voss says, you got to do the reps. Uh, One thing that I is a good exercise is for anyone that's listening to us, if unless it's like super late at night and they're not going to interact with anyone for the rest of the day, in the next 24-hour period, look at the next 3, 5, 10 messages, phone calls, texts, social media, whatever, however someone is finding and reaching you. Ask yourself a gut check question. Do I feel woo or do I feel ah when this comes in? There will be people that were messaging you and they want something because, like I said earlier, we all want something. And the people that you're like, it's just not a feel. It feels like an obligation, or you're not excited. Then ask yourself, what is it about this situation? What do they represent? Where I'm feeling woo versus ah. Where if you're really excited to get a call from some person and the other person you're not, what's the difference? Usually it's the person that you're excited about represents something for you that is more of a give than a take. Now, I will caution people if you owe somebody money and they're reaching out to you, it doesn't mean they're the asshole. It means
Yeah, that's probably an ah energy too, or
don't get mad at them, okay, for chasing you down and not communicating. So, but if you look at those things and say, okay, if that helps you, I think, with yes and no. So say yes, there's that line, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. My friend Peter Diamandis says, the squeaky wheel gets replaced. And so say no to the annoying people. Say no, uh, and and when I say no, start practicing it. People are like, well, how do I do that? You practice it. I'm afraid to ask. I'm single. How do I ask? So, I actually have a whole chapter on how to, if you're single, how to use marketing to find a love relationship. And we talk about the work I've done with Annie Lala, who's a love coach, and I have a singles ad that is a really effective way. And the funny thing with my singles ad in the book is that it shows who I want to attract, but it's also written to repel, not offend, but who I don't want to attract, because every form of marketing is selling is designed to attract who you want, repel who you don't. And again, I want to caution the word repel. It means not that you're being a jerk or anything, because there's nothing where I'm like being a jerk in that. It's just, here's what I'm looking for, here's who I am, here's what I'm not looking for. And that's part of the yes no equation that we all go through. So when in doubt, say no, uh, and also know that you are saying no a lot by giving maybe answers. Yeses are great if you're selling something. It's great to say yes, they're going to buy my stuff. Nos, they suck because you didn't make the sale, right?
yeah.
Maybes are what kill you though, because maybes is like purgatory. You don't really know, is it a yes or no, and you can waste an enormous amount of time with maybes. And if you don't want to waste other people's time and you want to be known as a person who's direct and responsible and caring, say yes or say no. Don't say maybe unless you really need time to think about it. Or there are some situations where someone is so manipulative that you're not going to just try to shoo them away. You're going to try to protect yourself. So there are everything I'm saying has to be taken in the right context, because there are unique situations that require different sort of stuff. However, for the most part, if you operate as as a caring, awesome human, you'll develop a relationship that way. And part of it is as you develop these skills and you develop that, you'll become known for what you say yes to and what you say no to. So I don't, I have a lot of people that don't take the time to learn and know anything about me, but one of the best ways that I say no is I now have I put up firewalls between me and people have to on my website, if they want to present an opportunity, they have to fill out some stuff, not just reach out to Joe in contact with your half-baked idea, hoping I'm going to figure it out. I mean, the other thing too is my foundation. I have Genius Recovery, my
Yeah.
foundation. People that are supportive of my addiction and recovery work, I will give them more attention than people that are not because it's meaningful to me.
If you want to get Joe's attention, also bring the crystal meth horse with the cigar smoking at 3 in the morning, and he might entertain that.
I'll
So,
tell them where to get rehab and where to go to rehab.
yeah, exactly. Well, Joe, before I ask you my last question, I just want to acknowledge and thank you so much for your time and your energy and just your expertise. This was an amazing conversation for me, and I know for some of our listeners as well. We're really looking to build not just a world class network, but just world class relationships and just operating from a place of authenticity. So, thank you so much for that, my friend. I appreciate it. And as you know, we ask every single guest on the show what their personal definition is of living their truth. So, Joe, what is your definition of living your truth?
Well, here's the thing. My definition would totally change on what the truth is for me at that particular moment in time. And it's, you ever read The Untethered Soul by
Yeah,
Michael
Michael. Michael. Great book.
Yeah, yeah, awesome book. And in the beginning, he talks about to thine own self be true, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, what is your own self? What if you're scared and insecure? Or another time you're feeling confident, or you're really interested in this thing, but at another time you're really tired and I want to go out and we're going to dance all night. Another time you're exhausted. The last thing I want to go out is
Yeah,
meet with
yeah.
people. So, my definition of truth is contextual and it's based on kind of where I'm at. I mean, when I'm thinking from my higher self, how the rare moments in time that I do that, right? Because I still got my monkey brain and all that other shit. I'm just trying to increase my level of consciousness and connectivity and contribution as much as I can make, not only to others but to myself, right? I'm engaged. Truth to me is uh, you can't connect with other people if you're disconnected from yourself. So living my truth is living a life of feeling connected, being in relationships with people that I want to be in, not being pulled with a negative cravings that I'm finding myself trying to control. So, since I've been in recovery for 20 years, I will go through stages where, depending on the stress level, where I have ruminating thoughts, where I have cravings to go and act out or to do drugs or to, just pursue things that in the moment feel good, but really long term aren't very good for me. And so living my truth is having been immersed and stay immersed in relationships that are really valuable and really good for me, getting sleep, eating nutritious food, sunshine, water intake, all the basic shit that a million different
Yeah.
talk about, doing the things that just take care of the $1 million racehorse and not saying yes to things that are going to be damaging to my life or worse be damaging to other people. And so living my truth is just being connected to myself, and if I do, then life works. I respond to life, and when I'm not, I'm reacting to life. So living in response, which is probably the best way I'd be able to explain what I guess the way I would answer that question.
Joe, thank you so much for that answer, my friend. I really appreciate you again, and your time is so valuable. So thank you. And thanks to all of you for tuning into this week's episode of Live Your Truth Now. If you like what you heard, go ahead and give us a follow on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcast. You can also watch other episodes of the Live Your Truth Now podcast on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mike Liguori. I'll see you next week. Take care.